everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Mitrovich, and I am a senior here at Cardinal Newman. So everyone in the audience has felt isolated sometime in their life, whether they feel like they don't fit in with their friends, or feel like they can't talk to their family, or even just isolated from the rest of society. But imagine feeling like that every single day of your life while also being ill. When I was in 8th grade, I became very ill. I didn't know what was wrong with me for 9 months and why I wasn't a lively teenage girl anymore. For those first 9 months, I felt set apart from my peers, and even after I got a diagnosis, I didn't feel any more included. Why are people that are ill isolated from those around them? How does that isolation manifest, and what is it really like? Wit is a movie about a woman named Vivian who is suffering from ovarian cancer. The movie basically documents her life as she's going through experimental treatment and focuses a lot on her doctor-patient relationship because her doctor is pretty rough on her and is always telling her to be tough even when she can barely lift her head off the pillow. Vivian starts noticing how she's always being asked, "How are you feeling? How are you doing today?" And it's quite obvious how she's feeling when she's throwing up, can't get out of bed, or can't even stay awake all day. But she often doesn't answer with a honest answer because she knows that these people are using this as more of a just common greeting, how are you today? But to her, it reminds her how bad she really is feeling, and it makes her realize how she really would answer if she were to be honest. And it makes her feel all alone and like she's suffering this illness with no one by her side. Another word for isolation. Later in the movie, Vivian starts talking about how everything she does is measured, even how much she throws up. It starts making her feel like she's just a file with numbers and check boxes, and like she's not even human. This makes her realize that people around her, the normal, healthy people, don't have to document everything in their life or what they do every minute of the day. But for her, because she is suffering such a deadly illness, she has to. And this reminds her, again, how isolated she is from the rest of the healthy society. And in Vivian's case, her cancer treatment makes her sicker. So, she's losing hair like most cancer patients, but she's lost an immense amount of weight and also just can barely even stay awake, like I said earlier. And this might seem obvious, but the sicker you feel, the further away you feel from the rest of society. So, changing gears a little bit, I read an essay by a woman named Jennifer called Finding Poetry in Illness, and Jennifer is suffering from kidney failure. So the essay is basically documenting the way she's coping with her disease, and I just want to point out that I was reading this out of my own curiosity. I was not reading this for an English project or this talk I'm giving to you right now. I was just reading on my own time. I did not type in the word isolation and disease. I did not research anything. I just stumbled upon it. And it was all good, and then I came across a couple sentences that had everything to do with what I'm talking to you about right now. And I found it on accident. And I just think that proves how common it is to feel isolated while you are ill, that I found it on accident when reading an essay. So, those who haven't suffered serious illness rarely understand how isolating it can be. Suddenly, I was cut off from all the strong and healthy people scurrying up their ladders of success. Being weak in America feels shameful, and I just wanted to hide. So let's break this down a little bit. The first sentence, that people that haven't suffered illness can't understand how isolating it is. I think this is really true, and it's important because it kind of gives the why to this talk. Then I realized that I'm giving a talk to a group of people that most likely, hopefully, haven't suffered a serious illness and don't understand how isolating it can be. But that's why this is important, because it's like the saying that you can't know what someone's going through unless you walk in their shoes. And I think that's so true, that people just don't know. Going forward, she felt cut off from the people scurrying up their ladders of success. So when you're sick, and sometimes certain people are even fighting for their lives, it's hard to go about your normal life and trying to, progress forward with your relationships or your job or your schooling when you're so sick. And seeing all these healthy people just doing exactly that, scurrying up their ladders, it's hard, and it makes you realize that you really are cut off, that you can't even progress in your own life like you would want to and like everyone else around you is. And then lastly, being weak in America feels shameful. So I think this is something I experienced, and I hadn't really thought about it consciously until I read this sentence, that there is something shameful about having a disease in America. And it shouldn't be like that, but it just is. So In my own life, I think I learned a lot from both the essay and the movie with Vivian. With the movie, I learned that although diseases differ, isolation is a common thread among most diseases. And then also tying into that, the always being asked how you're feeling, treatment making you sicker, and feeling like a number, everything being measured. So in my own life, I was always asked, how are you feeling? How are you doing today? And it was often followed by, but you don't look sick, which was just even made it worse. And I was like Vivian, and I usually, unless it was certain few people, I didn't answer that question, honestly. I usually said, good, how are you? But in reality, I could have probably given a couple-minute answer of how badly I was feeling that day, but I wasn't honest with the people that asked. And then everything being measured, I felt this a lot with like test results. You know, you're getting all these results from labs and you're trying to interpret what the numbers mean, and it's like a foreign language. And often doctors are like, well, your labs say this, so that means you must be this or you must be feeling this, but you're a person too. And then also the treatment making you sicker. That's true in Lyme disease as a whole, but for me it was very true. I was so excited to get a diagnosis after being sick for 9 months and not knowing what was wrong with me. But even when I got my diagnosis, the treatment was worse than the disease itself. And then with the essay, I learned that isolation truly does just stem from misunderstanding. No one's trying to isolate the ill on purpose, but it just happens. And also with the essay, the feeling of shame. I think I experienced this a lot, especially early on in my journey with Lyme, because people just didn't understand. And often adults would look at me and say, we don't have Lyme in our area, so you couldn't have gotten it around here, or you're lucky, it could have been worse. Or when my peers still say, what's Lyme disease? But I've grown a lot since the beginning of my journey, and I'm proud of my experiences, and I'm proud to tell people what I've gone through and try to help educate people that don't know what this disease is. And that is the main reason for my CBSL project in the Lyme Light, to share my story and raise awareness and education for a disease that I know all too well. So last year, in this very gym, I held a fashion show fundraiser, the first annual, for Lyme disease, and I raised almost $7,000. And I am excited that I'm holding the second annual show this April 9th, right here again, to raise more money and awareness for this disease and just for one serious illness. So anyone can be physically, psychologically, mentally, or emotionally isolated, but feeling isolated while ill is all too common. When I was told by 3 different doctors to take a year off school, dance, basically my life, I refused because I wanted to feel normal, like a part of society, and not isolated from my peers, even on my worst days. Thank you.